One of those things for me was just kind of getting a grasp and understanding. I didn't know what a lot of things, and I didn't know a lot about the business, and I didn't know who to trust, right? And when you meet with people, especially in the accounting space, you expect to get the results and get somebody that's going to lead you. And I didn't have the right path prior to that, because a lot of those conversations that you and I had, I did not have previously with the other accountants that I had.
Yeah, so that's with any vendor, whether it's a lawyer, an accountant, you want to make sure you understand what they're going to be doing for you. Because a lot of times people think, oh, I'm paying my accountant, but they think they're going to do everything for me and make sure I'm squared away. Whereas the accountant might be thinking, I'm going to meet with this person once a year and do their tax return and then not talk to them. So a lot of that is it stinks to have to like read legal contracts, but especially in the accounting world, they're going to make it very clear, we're doing this for you at this time for this amount of money, and that's it. So, so some of that's just having that enough knowledge to know what are they doing it for you. Like we were just talking about a website company we were working with, and I didn't have any knowledge in that. And it's just, I thought they were going to be doing a lot more than what they were really going to do. So
so that's the same with legal, right? I remember a couple things early on whenever I got involved was, I had a couple bad meetings with not with accountants, but with attorneys, and ended up costing me money, which it wasn't supposed to in my eyes. And it was just, I didn't understand the lay of the land, how legal worked and things of that nature. It was the same thing with accounting. It's the same thing with a lot of other business or sides of the business when you're starting it out, because what you know versus what you don't know is, until you have the experience of having to figure that stuff out, it's so hard to predict and it's so hard to understand those things. And I started the business, and my dad kept saying to me, do you know your numbers? Do you know your numbers? Do you know your numbers? And I kept saying to my dad, if I don't have a brand, it doesn't matter. My numbers don't mean anything. And that, not that I didn't care about the numbers, but I didn't put a priority of actually understanding the numbers. And that was the biggest thing, was if I would have really paid attention to that since day one, maybe the ride wouldn't have been as difficult. I don't think it would have been far easier by any means, but it could have been a little bit easier just by having an understanding of how everything worked. Yeah,
if you have a good idea of what your numbers are, and if you know really what they are, it can, again, help you make decisions. So if you're going to hire someone, is now a good time, or is it maybe 6 months from now? What does that look like if you do it now? What does that look like if you do it 6 months? What are you personally okay with? It's better to have data when you're making decisions. I think that's a lot of new startup businesses just sort of, it's too much work to get the data, so let's just try it and see what happens, sort of philosophy. But with financials, especially today, we have so many tools that we can set you up with where even you can do it yourself to track your numbers and have a pretty good idea of what's going on. And then that can help you. So then instead of paying us, like back in the day, you used to have to pay an accountant to put together your books. Now you can get set up with QuickBooks or Xero or something that'll automate a lot of that for you. And then instead of paying us to do that, you can pay us to sit down and ask a question like, hey, here's my numbers. What would it look like if I hired someone right now? What does it look like if I added health insurance for my employees right now? Then you can better make those decisions. So we don't have to tell you what to do, but we can say, hey, if you do this, this is what it looks like.
So that made me really think about the beginning stages, because whenever I started, I was like, I want to expand. And what you just said there about, is it the right time? Do you have the right people? All those things that come into that. What do you tell a business person, an entrepreneur, somebody that's trying to expand and trying to grow? How do you get that in their head? Because for me, I know you kept saying that to me, but I don't want to say I didn't listen. I did listen, but I wanted to believe I could still make it work.
Yeah,
I'm sure that's a hurdle you run into.
Yeah, so everybody's going to be different. I think a lot of the times it's helpful to have that data. So instead of me just giving my opinion to you and you having your own opinion, let's have some real data to look at. So instead of me saying, hey, you don't want to do this now, I could say, if you do this now, here's what it's going to look like. And then you could go, oh, I don't want that to happen right now. Or, hey, if you don't do this now and you do it whenever in the future, here's how much better you're going to be in 3 years versus if you do it now. Like instead of just what does it look like right now if I do it, but if you do it now, let's project that into 3 years versus some other plan projected into 3 years. Where are you going to be at 3 years from now that's better? Yeah. So then you can see, do you want to sacrifice something now to be better 3 years from now? Do you want to not? What's that? Maybe it's not that big of a difference. So it's like, hey, let's not sacrifice now because it won't be that much of a difference. So just having that data is good. But to start with, back to your original question, would be you need to find someone you trust that's going to give you some of that information up front, just so you know it's there. Like the first time we meet with people, I throw a lot of information at them, just in general, just, hey, I don't know what your knowledge base is. I don't want to offend you by explaining something simple you might already know,
Right.
but I want to make sure you just know these things are out there. And our first meetings with people are always free. We never charge for them. We just want you to know this stuff is out there. These are different services we can give you. Someone else can give you something you want to just make sure you're comfortable with.
Yeah. No, and it's been a great relationship. I mean, I've enjoyed, I think, the friendship that we've built through this, but also a lot of it's been kind of understanding our outlook on life, the future, what we want to get out of everything, and the art of business, right? You're not just an accountant, and your company, your team, they're not just accountants. It's really business consultants as well. So I think there's so much more value versus, like you said, when you're really trying to investigate in the beginning by finding out what the needs of the business owner are, or owners are, and actually want to bring that back to say, hey, okay, now we have the blueprint to move forward. We have the blueprint to do this, versus where I was in a bad spot before. That was because it was just more or less of it was hey, let me go and look at your books and do these at the end of the year and hopefully get things right. And we went through a big headache where it didn't work out that way. And to anybody that's out there listening, it's the stress of having to worry about going through some math. It was a pretty big audit, and to go through the headache of that, knowing that you did everything right and by the book, but because I didn't have receipts and I had to dig receipts up and figure those things out, it was a headache that could have been avoided,
mitigated at least,
or mitigated. Yeah, to make it as not as much of a pain as it was. I mean, how you spent 100 hours on it?
It was a lot of time. Yeah,
so
and that's what happens, because that was the year we didn't do. So
yeah,
we had just come in,
right,
trying to see what makes sense of what was going on.
Yeah, that was, and ironically, 2017 was one of it was absolutely my most difficult year building the business and kind of getting involved, because that was when I ran out of money. That was when it was like all my savings was completely wiped out after a year and a half or something along those lines, and it came down to, like, you're at the tail end of this, meaning me, at the tail end of survival. And it was kind of like the next step was, hey, get with Stan and get this right, or there was no trail that was going to continue. It was going to come to an end,
Yeah, that's what's interesting about growth. If you grow too fast, the cash flow you're going to need to make that happen is going to be a lot more than you're probably going to be able to generate. So managing that is interesting, because once you get started and everything's going well, then you think like, oh, let's double, let's triple, let's quadruple in size. A lot of companies fail then because they don't manage the growth. They don't have the cash to make it happen. It's not coming in as fast as it's going out. So that's why you do those 3-5 year goals, those projections, to make sure you're going to be able to make it happen.
So talk to me about the growth side of that, because there's a handful of business owners and businesses that have grown and thrived through the pandemic and post-pandemic. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that are kind of running into that situation where they are growing so much and they are having those types of situations. What's some advice that you would give somebody in that situation or that position to get through it? What's the best tactic? What's the 1, 2, 3?
So one, you always need to have those goals. Why are you doing it? Where are you going? How are you going to get there? Because that's going to help you make decisions. You start to get lost in the weeds, lost in the sauce, where, there's this opportunity, there's that opportunity. Oh, there's this great employee I can hire. But you want to make sure that aligns with what you're doing. So everything aligns. Because if you start spreading yourself too thin or going off your direction, that's when things can start to fall apart. So that's one, stay on mission, stay on goal.
Which is really, really hard.
It is hard, because then you start to think, well, maybe this isn't my mission. Maybe I should go over here and do that thing. And that's fine to sit down as a separate exercise to reevaluate why you're doing it. Is it really why you want to do it? But once you commit to that, you really want to stay that course, or else you end up expending too many resources in too many different directions, and you just won't have that. So that's certainly one thing. 2 is you need those projections. If it's going to cost you $500,000 to get somewhere, and you only have $100,000 and you can only go get capital or loans for another $200,000, you're still $200,000 short. You start down that path, you're going to end up $200,000 short. There's no hoping or anything around that. Or if there is, you should factor that into your plan to begin with. So that's where maybe you need to scale it back or slow it down or come up with a different solution. So if you have the forethought and the time and energy to look at it first, then you can make decisions outside of being in the moment. That's can be a make or break situation.
Yeah, for sure. And there are a lot of businesses that face that too. I mean, this is a common situation, right? Is there are companies that grow quickly or grow too fast in some capacity, and it's the death of them.
Yeah, and it's not always financial. I mean, part of the advisory stuff we do is sort of sitting on like a chief executive board. So in those types of meetings, you might say, oh, we have the money to do it, but we don't have the people. So, hey, we've got all these projects, we're crushing it. We go to fulfill the contracts or whatever, if you're in a service industry, or products, if you're in a product industry, and we can't make them that fast, or we don't have that many people to provide those services. So now you start to deteriorate your brand recognition, you lose all those contracts, you can end up worse than you are. So part of it's like a logistics planning. It's not just a financial plan, but a man hours plan or a machine production plan, those types of things.
Yeah.
So planning's super important.
I mean, that's the lifeblood of anything, right? Is having an understanding. And then also too, right? Like look at the pandemic. Nobody planned for that, obviously, but I would assume the businesses that had planning as far as money and savings position that, their self with inventory or some product a little bit differently or a little bit more strategically than some competitors. There's a lot of people that weren't planned properly to withstand something like the pandemic, or even something that may have been a 3-month or 4-month long issue, right? Not 2 years.
Yeah, and that's small businesses. And when I say small, I mean like you make 25 million or less a year. That's kind of how the government defines small businesses. So if you're a small business, you should be agile enough to pivot and make those changes. So if it's, we suddenly lost a vendor, or there's a pandemic, or something changed in the market that you weren't expecting, you should be meeting regularly and have enough room in your plan to make a pivot to something else to see how you survive. But it's still planning. You're still looking ahead. It's not like, we're in it now and we're at the finish line and we're not going to make it. It's more, we see it coming. Because even with the pandemic, in mid-March, there start to be talks of things are getting shut down. We started to sit down with our clients then and say, if you get shut down, what is your plan? We didn't know how long, but it was just, if you can't work anymore, what are you going to do? Yeah. Are you going to lay employees off right away? Then there was talks of the PPP loans and the employee retention credits. So it's just having that discussion so as a business owner, or your employees know if you're sharing it with them, what you're looking at doing, having a strategy in place.
Well, whenever we were going through all that stuff at that stage for our business, you and I were talking multiple times a day. I would assume that's the case with other people because there was so much fear and panic, but I think the bigger thing was there was the unknown, and there were so many rule changes happening that maybe you can get the PPP, but then you can't get the EDI or whatever.
They're still changing them. It's right? October.
Yeah, which is not mind blowing when you think about it's our government, right? But those were things that you and I were literally being as fluid as can be with trying to figure out what's the right game plan. And I remember there was a point where we didn't go after getting one the disaster loan or the PPP loan or whatever, because then you couldn't get the other, and then they changed it. Yeah. And then you start figuring out, okay, well, how does this benefit the team? How does it benefit the company? How does it allow us to survive? And all these other decisions are running through your mind, is trying to figure out how do you keep making this thing go after 3 years of hell to try to get something going, to have something that was so crazy come out of nowhere.
And that's the advantage of having a trusted advisor, whether it's your attorney or your accountant or an investment advisor, is they don't just work with you, they work with lots of companies. So I wasn't just for you learning about these things. I had learned them, other clients were already implementing them, some were holding off. So I had a lot more knowledge to share with everyone that's outside of just your industry or your specific situation. So I can bring that knowledge to you and see, here's what's probably best for your situation based on what we know now, knowing that it keeps changing. And we kept pivoting even up until last month. We're still like, here's another thing we can take advantage of or utilize or look at.
What a crazy scenario for businesses, man, and to experience that and to go through that, and to see just what's happened through that process. And that was probably the most educational kickstart I've ever had or ever would have had in business. Because if you can get through that, it's like, all right, there's, not that you can get through anything, but it really builds up some character and tests your will to want to keep going.
Yeah, for a lot of people, it was really hard. Some people decided to close their businesses down. Some people, like you said, were able to thrive or pivot and do something different that they're still doing now. So you never know what's going to come up, but that's, if you have a good team and you have a good process, that's the advantage. You can hit those situations as soon as they come.
Yeah. So, kind of focusing on, when you start working with clients and you start building that rapport, and, we talked before about you gave me some advice on certain things, and, I, in my opinion, at least, took all of it and ran with it. But there are certain things that it's tough to break the habit, right? And then it's like the constant daily reminders of, Stan and I reviewed this. We have to do this. We have to execute this. We have to move this way. And I think the biggest thing from our end was really where, whenever I'm almost certain the net margin side of business was something that was just a total disaster. That I thought we were in one situation, we were in a completely different situation, and now we're 2.5 to 3 times what it was then, which is crazy. So why I bring that up is because it took us every bit of 12 months or 14 months to see that momentum change, even though I believe you had a good idea and a good direction from the beginning on that when we first sat down. But those are things that I want other business owners to understand, that it's okay that it takes time. You just make sure you're willing to understand and see the consequences of what can happen, because that's what saved us.
Yes. So depending on what you're talking about, certain things take longer than others in your industry. I mean, there's a lot of factors. That's why it's hard. Anytime someone calls me up and is like, hey, I have this quick question, it's like, it's probably not a quick answer. So, but in your specific case, and in a lot of people's cases, they think they know what their margins are. But when you factor in what you're really paying for, and overages and waste and shipping and merchant fees and all this extra stuff that you might not be factoring in, or you think you are, but you're just not, that's not reflective of reality. When you have your actual numbers, then you can see, like I've seen businesses before where for every dollar they make, they actually lose a certain amount, like 5%, 10%, just because of their overhead is just not what they thought it was, or their margin isn't what they thought it was. So knowing that for real is super important, especially before you start, or knowing when to stop. It's, hey, this isn't gonna work. If you run it before, if you're looking at buying a business or starting a business, and you get with an accountant or a lawyer or someone up front to talk about the legalities of the situation, the tax implementations. Some people think, I made this much money, it's mine. And then it's like, oh, well, wait a second. Here comes all the taxes on the back end that you maybe didn't factor in, or different things like that. So really knowing those numbers is important.
Yeah.
Because it can help you make decisions. You think, I have 10%, I can, in your case, like give it away to charity. I can do all these great things and help these people out. And then at the end of the day, it's like, oh, really? You didn't have that 10% that you thought you did. So,
and I think there were a handful of times we actually had that conversation. It's like, you're trying to help so many other people, but if you don't start helping yourself or figuring this out for for your business, you're not going to be around to help people in the future. And I'm almost certain that was verbatim on what our conversation took at some point.
Yeah, and that's during the pandemic, back to that, or any crisis you might have in the future. That's a lot of what you might have to speak with your employees about. It's like, hey, we have to do these things so that we exist in a year from now. That was a lot of the pandemic conversations, was what can we do now that might not be great for everyone, but that will ensure that this company and most of the people here will have jobs when this is all over. So it's thinking about the longer term picture.
Yeah. Which is difficult because, in our case, we built the business off of helping people essentially. And I think, within the first couple months of being active in business, it was like, hey, let's throw a fashion show and let's do this to benefit other people. And, and it's a great thing. And I'm happy the way it's played out. Unfortunately, we made it through everything, but there were times where I did kind of second guess, like, what are we doing? Because we weren't taking care of ourselves. And it just delayed some growth and made us run into some hiccups. But at the early stages in business, $1,000 hiccup or a $500 hiccup or a $2,000 hiccup can be a pretty massive one, especially when cash flow is so sporadic. And, if it's a seasonal business like ours, which typically in some months it's just not great, some months are fantastic. So it's almost like you have that perfect storm at certain parts throughout the year that can be pretty detrimental. So a big tip to everybody is like, make sure you get your business up and stable first and foremost. And you can help people along the way, obviously. And I strongly encourage that. And I know you do as well. But you really have to make sure you're okay, because the more you have control of your situation, it just will make your life a lot easier.
Yeah, it's that airplane oxygen mask metaphor. You put yours on first so that you can stay conscious to keep helping as many other people as you can. So it's that sort of same thing. You want, because it's not even externally, you want to take care of your employees. If you don't have everything squared away and something happens, then it's like, oh, well, I have to fire one of them or we can't keep going. So if you make sure every level of your business, you keep your foundation solid, you won't have to have, or you might have to, but you're less likely to have a conversation where it's like, hey, I'm sorry, we have to let you go, or something like that.
So shifting focus a little bit, and just kind of, I want to get an understanding of you more as well as the teammate that we have. Or I consider you a business partner. I really genuinely do. And anybody I talk to, I know you're here and I'm saying it in front of you, but I truly mean that. Like you've changed my life and saved everything we've done. We used you for the marketing. We refer you to anybody we possibly can. There's got to be enjoyment on your end in what you do on the day to day. And coming from somebody that took accounting 5 times in college and, had to go to community college twice to make some stuff up, it wasn't anything that I enjoyed. But when we talk now, knowing my background in accounting and how I didn't care a lot about it and didn't understand a lot about it, but I really enjoy our meetings that we have on a monthly basis. And you make it very easy for me to understand and easy to enjoy. Is that something from a standpoint of your experience as you're building your business, your practice now, you just enjoy being a part of something that's helping somebody? Or talk to me a little bit about that feeling for your career.
Yeah, it's fun for me. I get to hear about what people are passionate about, what they're trying to do, and try and make that happen for them or help them make that happen. Because it's like starting a business every day. Like I get to work with different people and see where they're going and where they're at, and they're at different stages. It's exciting to see them grow and see them reach goals that they've set for themselves and gain that traction of, hey, we said we were going to do this. We went out and did it. It happened in a great way for us. Maybe not exactly the way we planned it or thought, but it worked out well. And we're going to move on to the next thing and grow even bigger. So that's really fun for me. And because of technology nowadays, accountants don't have to sit in the back room and just run numbers on spreadsheets and fill out tax forms. It's more, a lot of that stuff's automated and computers can do it, so we can bill our clients for our time sitting down with them and asking questions and exploring ideas and being more creative. So that's really fun, where I don't have to just say, here's you're going to have to pay in taxes this year. We could be like, oh, you're doing this marketing strategy. Have you thought about this? I mean, I'm not a marketing person, but it's fun to share those types of ideas. Or can you incorporate some financial metrics into tracking whatever task or goal you're trying to do, so we can look more at KPIs or incorporating KPIs across non-financial functions. So it's not just a financial, now it's just some other type of metric that we can help you track that's outside of your dollars and cents income and expenses.
Yeah. How common or uncommon is that in the accounting world, or the general practice of accounting, is to take those types of additional roles on? Or is it more to the majority of firms, or is it just more of a, hey, let's just crunch this and roll?
I think it's a new wave that's coming through. It as technology comes into play, it's harder for people to justify, hey, hourly billing, I'm going to give you a bill for my time. But now that computers are doing a lot of the work and you spend less time on it, it's, do you lower that client's bill, or do you find another way to get the same amount of time in and add value, called value-added services? Wouldn't you rather pay me for me to come up with an idea for you to save money or make more money, rather than just, hey, the government wants me to fill out this form, I'm going to pay you to do that?
Right.
So it's incorporating more of those things, and I think that's more of the trend, the way the accounting firm's going. My thought is eventually computers are going to be doing most of the tax work, most of the audit work. There's still going to be need for it with certain things, but it's going to be less and less emphasis on that and more on the advisory, the strategic planning, the trusted business partner, and that type of work.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's amazing with, even with us on the marketing side of things, how much tech plays into this and automation and things of that nature that it simplifies the role for somebody, but it also eliminates or maybe not even eliminates, but redirects the role of other people. And I think it's the same thing that you guys are going through on the accounting side. Look, the more progressive we are as a society with tech, and that's only going to get greater and greater as the days go on, things are going to quickly change. The accessibility to data is a whole different world. Live updates, different things of that nature. You can peel pretty much any report you want to peel nowadays. For us, we use Shopify for the mask business. We use Shopify. And I'm sure there's a million other platforms that can pull some data and pull analytics for things. But it is cool because I think as a business owner, and it's always good to get additional feedback. It's always good to get somebody to bring in a fresh perspective and to have somebody that doesn't just deal in our areas of expertise from a business standpoint, but you're able to pull your knowledge that you've seen work in other industries, other fields or whatnot, and potentially make suggestions that, hey, this, you could try to implement this or implement X, Y, Z and see if it works. So getting a whole creative, fresh set of eyes on a different business is always helpful.
Yeah, and that's actually with strategic planning, it's a lot easier for someone to come in and guide the conversation without being in the weeds with everybody else, because then you can look at a high level what's really going on. You can be detached from the situation and help guide the client or the group to make the plan that they really want to make that they can't when they're in it, because they can't elevate themselves to be out of the weeds and really see what the environment looks like.
Yeah.
So
that's hard.
Yeah, it is.
It's really, really difficult.
Because it's funny, even when we do it for our own business, it's harder to detach. But when I walk into a room like with the board of directors, like, hey, what are we doing this year? It's easy. Here's the plan. I can lay it out. It's a lot clearer. And then when you look internally at yourself, it's like, oh my goodness, this is so hard to detach and see the bigger picture. So
yeah. Is there for you specifically, is there a preferred industry that you get to work in? Is there something that just fascinates you a little bit more, or is it just all the sheer dynamics of how things behind the scenes operate?
Yeah, so some accounting firms will specialize in a specific industry. Like, hey, we only do orthodontics, or we only do small restaurants. We like to think of ourselves as specialty in the small business advisory service. So we're sort of like your quarterback. If we don't know something, we'll guide you through. We'll help you find the person that does. And since you trust us, we'll go to those meetings with you. We'll make it happen. Like, one of the things we don't do are trusts and estates. But if we have a high net worth client that wants to set something like that up or go through and make changes to theirs, we'll go to that meeting with them knowing that, hey, we're not the expert here. We know the client. We want to make sure the client's best served. So we're going to come in and sort of represent the client as the quarterback kind of idea. And I think that's more the way things are going. So you have a bunch of niche firms that are good at what they do, and then they'll work with each other to get the best service rather than someone that just is kind of okay at everything and sort of makes it happen. So we'll be the first ones to tell you, we don't know anything about that. We're happy to work with you. We already have relationships with people that do. Let's make this happen. So,
but I think that's one of those things where a lot of these like cliche statements from entrepreneurs are like, hey, I'm not the smartest person in the room, but I surround myself with everybody that went to MIT or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I look at like the path that I've gone with business, I have a lot of attorney friends, but Rocco specifically, we do a lot of work with him. You on the accounting side, Chris and Derek on the marketing side, and then there's just like me, like I'm the relationship person. I don't bring in the brains or any of this stuff, so I'm very fortunate. But I think I'm the smartest out of all you because I put myself around all of you guys, so you guys can do all the heavy lifting for me. But that makes it fun, right? Because I'm getting to pick up on things, and I'm getting to learn, and I'm getting to grow, and I'm getting to have a unique experience on business. And I look at things now and versus 5-6 years ago, and I feel like any business that I started now, I get to skip a little bit. but a lot of that took me figuring out, how do I get you in my corner? How do I get Rocco's, Chris, Derek, and people like that? And it really changes the way you can operate. And when we were talking about another business venture earlier today, it's like there are opportunities out there that may make sense, that it's a little bit of work in the scheme of things, but if everybody kind of comes full circle, things can take off quickly.
Yeah, the first time is the hardest most of the time.
Yeah.
So like you're saying, you already learned some stuff, you already have those relationships. And that's when we were talking about projections. If you know pretty certainly that you can make a certain amount of money and you're going to get there in a year or two, it might be worth putting out some money up front to have meetings with attorneys, to have meetings with advertising agencies, to have meetings with accountants, to make sure everything's set up the right way. I don't know how many times we got clients where it's like, oh, they're now making $1 million, $2 million, they need help. We go in and it's like, what have you been doing? Like, this is a mess. You're gonna spend way more money cleaning all this stuff up. You didn't do this right, you didn't do that right. You could have had a better advantageous position had you done this from the start. It's too late to fix that. That if you would have just done it from the start, it would have been a lot easier, it would have been a lot cheaper. Sure, you might not have had that money then, but if you know, that's the hard part, is like, do you want to take that bet on yourself? Are you going to be able to make it? So I get it. It's a hard balance. And we never want to upsell people on something they don't need. So we're saying, hey, this is out there, but you probably don't need it right now.
Well, and I think too, man, that's an interesting point, because I try to put myself back into day 1, day 20, day 50 and whatever. And at that point, man, like, I didn't know a lot, and I didn't know that how valuable it was to pay somebody to do those things. And I was like, okay, well, this is the early stages. How complex can things be right now? And that's how you think of it. And it's like, well, I could spend X amount an hour getting an accountant, or I could spend that to get more product in. So oftentimes in the beginning stages of businesses, you're actually picking and choosing where the funds go.
Yeah.
And that makes it difficult too. And that's what I try to tell everybody now, like, hey, make sure the numbers are buttoned up, because that's important. But I wasn't that person, and I know a lot of people aren't that way. So like, how do you give some advice to somebody that's starting out a business, that money is tight in the beginning? Because let's be real, there's not a lot of companies that have millions of dollars behind them to get started. Everyone's
situation is different. If you're coming and you've got zero capital, you put maybe $100 from your bank account, you're going to have to scrap through it and make it work and just hope for the best. Once you start getting some funds, as soon as you can, you're going to want to have those meetings, because maybe you can still start a new business and shift everything over or sell it or whatever it might be. If you're starting with some capital, if you're building a fund where maybe you're going out and getting investors, even if it's just $100,000, you want to budget into that, the meeting with the attorney, the meeting with the accountant, the meeting with the marketing team, to make sure that's factored into your initial startup costs. So you use the capital for that, because it's going to be important, especially when you get into partners. I don't know how many times we've had partnerships where it's, oh, we set up our partnership last year, but we didn't do anything. We just started this year. And it's like, well, did you file a tax return for last year? Even though you didn't do anything, you still started it.
I think we went through that, didn't we?
One of your businesses, yeah.
We started in December, like 2 days before the end of the year. Yep. I think we signed up.
The IRS will get you. So there's certain rules. There's like holes you can fall into. If you just talk to someone, they'll let you know, hey, you got to do this. You filled out this form, so the government's looking for X, Y, or Z, or the state is looking. People don't realize, they say, oh, my accountant's handling my taxes. You've got income tax for federal, state, and locals. You've got municipal taxes. You've got sales and use taxes. You've got potential nexus issues across states with all their various taxes. Then you've got payroll taxes, FICA taxes. It's hard to say just taxes. So you think, oh, my accountant's handling it, but their accountant is thinking, oh, I'm doing their tax return for their business income taxes. I'm not doing their sales tax. I'm not doing their personal taxes or payroll taxes.
So I know you pulled up a fictitious number of $100,000 for a business if somebody has something like that, right? So like, I actually kind of want to address that, because that's a real number. That's a fair, common number that some people could stumble into, or they could scrounge together from friends and family, 50,000, 80,000, 100,000, 200,000, whatever the number is. That is not that much money. And what I mean by that is, I blew through 180,000 in my 401k pretty damn quick. because I didn't know anything I was just spending money because I knew in my mind I had this cushion of money there. So I wasn't strategic with every single dollar that I had for my business. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I want people to think about that stuff. Like, whether you have 100,000, 50,000, whatever the number is, every dollar goes fast. But every dollar at that beginning stage of business is very, very important. It's vital to see where the direction of that is going. I got, I don't want to say screwed over because it's my fault, but early on in the game, man, I think I dropped $3,000 on a magazine advertisement. I was like, oh, this is going to be the next ticket to make this business successful. Nothing happened. I got my name in a paper or something like that when I was like, okay, well, I just wasted money. Flew somewhere for it. Flew my sister there for it. 2 to 3 days in a hotel room, dinners, doing all that stuff, and all of a sudden you're blowing through $6,000-$7,000 for some fraudulent thing that didn't do anything for you. So, I was under the impression that if you did certain things, you're guaranteed to get a result from that. And through the marketing agency, that's what I've learned is why consistency is so important for that, is you have to stay on top of things. So one thing I would definitely encourage a lot of people to think about too is like, every opportunity, there's going to be a lot of opportunities that present themselves, but people are also going to reach out to you because their business is to make money in some capacity. So that magazine that reached out to me, like, that was their job, was to get sponsors and to get people to pay for this shit that they put together.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to make a single member LLC. You can do it online in a couple minutes. It's like $100. So people that just do hobbies and stuff, even I'm not going to say recommend, but a lot of people will make an LLC just for that, even if they don't really use it too much. As soon as you do that, you start getting stuff in the mail. Here's a credit card. Here's a line of credit I can give you. Here's this. You don't even have to do anything. You don't have to have a bank account. You just go in there and make David Allen LLC just for no reason, just for fun. Maybe I'm going to do something with it one day, and you'll start getting stuff right away. So you have to be careful, because those people are out there to just make money. And that's back to, what's your goal? What's your mission? What's your plan? What's your budget? What are you trying to do? Does that fit into it or not? Like your magazine ad, who's reading that magazine? Are those the people you want?
I don't even think it was a real magazine.
It wasn't even a real magazine.
They just had a bunch printed, and I took about 50 home with me because I was like, this is sweet. And then I realized, well, that was real sweet. I just lost almost $10,000.
So and I know, because we work a lot of the same clients with your marketing company, having those metrics behind a marketing plan is a good way to know if it's working or not. Are you hitting your target market? Are you getting those return on your dollars? Are you not? And I know Derek says all the time, it usually takes 6 months to a year to really see those returns. So it's making that plan to make sure, hey, I can afford this advertising this month. I can afford it next month. Can you afford it for 12 months? Because that's when it really becomes effective. So that's maybe now you can't. So now's not the time to start just doing it for 1 month, because it won't really work right now. So maybe you put those dollars elsewhere.
Yeah.
And that's where it's hard. Do you make sure you're legally squared away so you don't get sued and lose your company? Or do you make sure your numbers are right and you spend the money there? Can you balance it out? Those are hard questions to answer. That's the hard part about starting a business. That's why not everybody does it. And that's why it's easier when you have capital behind you. So sometimes I don't usually recommend people give up equity in their business, but sometimes if something's so difficult to get off the ground, that you might want to look for a partner.
Yeah, well, we've talked about that how many times? I mean,
yeah, you were trying to give away. You're just trying to give it away to anyone that wants it. But a few years ago, it's just like, just wait a few years. It's going to be worth a lot more. You don't want to be.
Yeah, well, that's so. We could talk about that too, because. And as we're talking, I know we're going to come up with a good flow for the next couple, how we want to do the next couple episodes. And I'm starting to get a good gauge of what would make the most sense for the audience. But to that point exactly, man, like, do you 10%, 5%, when you're getting involved in business and you're starting something, my personal opinion, there's a couple mistakes that entrepreneurs typically make. And I think I was part of it. I think everybody I've talked to, everybody that I've coached through or given advice to post, becoming stable in business, was a lot of people want to give up equity. And what I've realized through that process. I'm so fortunate that every conversation on equity never kind of came to fruition. I had a lot of deep conversations that went into almost signing paperwork and executing those things. But give yourself a chance to survive and give yourself a chance to fight, because I look at where I am now, or where we are now, versus where we were in the beginning, and I was very eager to get somebody else involved because I thought that was what would solve the problems, and it wasn't. Solving the problems was starting from scratch and having the baby steps to get this going and understand what was really happening with the business. You got to make sure you give yourself a fair shake at that, because now, even every dollar that's spent now, if I had a business partner, right, there would have to be justification on certain things. It really takes the fun out of owning your own business.
It can, yeah.
and potentially, but there are situations that do make sense where you need to do those things. And my perfect example with that side of things is, with the mask business. When we started the business, before I even brought it to Derek and Chris's attention, I was like, okay, David Allen Clothing, we've been working at it for 3 years. I risked all my money for this shit. I lost all my money for this stuff. I could launch this on my own and try to make a boatload of money. And then I was like, wait, stop. I need to do this with the two people that I trust the most with my life, that I also think by me giving up a piece of the pie and us starting a brand new company together, we can do a lot more with the three of us than I could have by myself. And as I watched everything unfold, if I would have did it by myself day one, I would have failed.
Yeah.
There was no way I could have done that. So that's why I'm so thankful that I've always stuck to my roots of just understanding the importance of other people and understanding the power of having good teammates. But with that same token, I've worked with people in the past, which actually made me apprehensive of even doing business with other people currently, was because I was burned by everybody that I was involved with. And then whenever I got into business with Derek and Chris, it was like the aha moment to me. It was like, there are people that still give a shit and actually will put effort into making this work. You just have to be very careful to make sure you don't shake hands with just anybody.
Yeah, we've worked with people that are family members or best friends, and they say, oh, we're going to start a business. The first thing we say is you want to make sure you contact an attorney, make sure you have an operating agreement or a partnership agreement or whatever legal agreements you need in place to clearly define what everyone's role is, what they're bringing, how profits are distributed, and what happens when you guys stop being friends and don't like each other anymore, and how you're going to dissolve the company, right of first refusal. And people always say, oh, no, we don't need that. We're best friends. We're family. This is my wife, my husband, my kid, my spouse, whatever. And a lot of times it doesn't end well. For whatever reason, people just have different ideas of money. And when you talk, you think, we're friends. They're not going to screw me over. But what one person thinks of money and screwing someone over is not what the other person thinks. And it can very quickly get out of control, and people are fighting and not talking to each other and suing each other, whatever it might be. So
and that's okay too, because that just shows you how different everybody is. But that's why you want to make sure you have things as clear as day from the beginning.
Yeah. So if you have an existing business and you're thinking about selling, not giving, you don't want to be giving, selling equity into the business, you want to make sure it's clear what you're gaining for that. Because if someone has a network of contacts that's going to drive your sales right away, that could be worth something in your business. They might be able to open doors that you're never going to be able to open, regardless of how big you get. That can be worth something. They might have knowledge or expertise that you don't have that can save your business. That can be worth something. But just, hey, I have some money, let me be a partner in your business. I'm not really going to do anything, or I might give it a try. Is that really what you need? That's back to that. What is your goal? What is your mission? What is your direction? How does that tie in? If you're just starting a business, it's sort of the same thing. Do you really need that money now? Can you get by without it? If you're trying to do, like if you're getting into real estate and you're flipping houses or something, it's a lot more profitable when you don't have to get loans and you can have a partner that funds sort of the ventures. It's pretty common, right, where one person doesn't really do the work. They bring the money, the other person does the work. But you run those numbers up front, make sure everybody understands what they're getting paid and why they're getting paid and how it all works. So it's just that planning. Those are the kind of things from the start you need to plan out, sign some legal documents before you really get started, or else it can get, oh, this person just gave me money. they think they own half the business. I think it's a loan. No one signed anything. The company's worth $10 million in 5 years, and they go, hey, where's my half? And you go, oh, no, I'm just paying you back your loan. And it's, then what's going on?
Business can get very, very ugly. And so if, when you break down, I think we'll use our marketing agency as an example. There's 3 of us involved, me, Derek, and Chris. And each one of us does something that the other one wants nothing to do with.
Right. And
that's the perfect marriage from a situational standpoint on what we have. I've talked about bringing people involved in business in the past, and now that you talk through that, it's like, that there were similar roles. Really, there was no need other than I wanted somebody else to feel the pain that I was going through, or I thought by bringing else somebody that was similar to me, there'd be a big benefit for the business. And that's not how it really goes. It was essentially me would have just been giving up something that at some point would have been stable and good on its own.
Yeah, I talked to someone recently, 3 guys, not you 3 guys, 3 different guys started a business where they're each a different, like skilled labor. One was HVAC, one was plumbing, one was something else. And they started a business together, but they wanted to track everything separately and not really make it like one business. They wanted to each sell their services separately. They wanted to each collect their income separately. I'm like, well, why did you guys start a business? So sometimes even before you do something, it's good to have a conversation with someone. They might say, what you're trying to do doesn't make sense. And that's where you want to have a trusted person, because that lawyer might just say, what do you want to do? Okay, here's your paperwork. Bye. But if you have a relationship with someone, and that's like you're saying, if you already have some businesses, you already have those people, they'll say, that doesn't make sense. Maybe you should do it this way, or maybe you should do a tier thing where you each have your own company that funnels into one company, or vice versa. And then you can work together if you want, or not if you want. You have that option. So,
and that's something that in my world, like, I'm at a point where if somebody reaches out to me and they need a plumber, they need an electrician, they need an accountant, whatever the service product may be, through the last 6 years of growing the brand and business, I have pretty much anybody within reach of anything that would be needed, right? So the great thing about that is for the last 6 years, I've been able to vet people that I've brought into my life and into my circle. And it allows me to say, okay, if somebody needs something, I know quickly that I could just say, hey, this is the person to go to. And then whenever people reach out to me on that standpoint, I don't second guess it. Like if I get a recommendation from you or Rocco or one of my other, colleagues or friends or business, relationships, and they recommend utilizing someone, I'm the type of person that I just pull the trigger and go ahead, because I trust that person that referred them to me has my best interest, and also they're a good person. So they're going to refer somebody that's fair, honest. Hey, they may be 20% more in a cost, or they may be 20% less in a cost, but it doesn't matter. I want to use that person because they're a trusted person. And that's to me, an important piece of business is to get to that level where you have those reliable people, even if they're outside of your business.
Yeah. And that's even people that aren't in business right now, or they don't own their own business. They work for someone else. Having a network of people that you can call and trust to do something is really important. Whether you're servicing clients for someone else in their business, or you're going to start your own, or you already have your own. Not just hey, I went to a networking event and I have these business cards. And
we talked about those. Those are mostly bullshit. So,
but knowing like, hey, I know this person's name. I know they're squared away. They're good people. Yeah. They're going to take care of you. That's the kind of stuff that builds relationships. Because like our firm, we don't do hardly any marketing. All of our clients we get is word of mouth. We want to provide a really good service for someone, and if they really like it, they're going to let someone else know when it comes up. And I think that's just a good way to do business, especially today. It's hard with the internet. You Google something, and whoever pays the most money is at the top of the Google. You don't really know who they are, what they're about. And then you get into those situations where you think they're doing one thing, they think they're doing something else, and you're in a weird spot.
It sounds like you need a marketing agency for some lead generation. So we'll talk after this and get that going. But all right, so we're going to wrap up here shortly, next couple of minutes. So a couple of things I want to talk about. One, just to kind of recap, we are going to have you back a handful of times. you and I will kind of sit down and just share some notes on. I have a good idea on what we can do. This conversation was awesome just because it gets me back in after a couple months, gets the flow going. But going into the end of the year, I think this is key because, with the new year coming, there's that whole new mentality with people getting fired up and energetic about a new opportunity and all that stuff. So I think we can really give a lot of good advice for what's coming at the close of this year and then the launch of 2022, which is crazy to even think that we're there already, but it goes fast. So kind of wrapping up here, talk to me about a couple common mistakes that you see businesses make. You don't have to go into crazy detail, but just so the people that are listening can say, okay, hey, maybe I'm in this situation, or okay, cool, I'm thinking about doing something. This is something to keep an eye out. What's one or two things that are just more common that you see businesses fail, not take off, or just kind of be stagnant in their growth?
Yeah. So I guess one thing would be, if you've just started a business, open a business bank account, use that account exclusively for your business activity. Don't mix personal accounts and personal credit cards with business activity and vice versa. That way, even if you aren't keeping track of your books, you can go right to that business account and know that's all your business activity. If a year later you're trying to think like, well, I went to the post office, I might have paid for cash, how much was that? It's never going to work. You're probably going to be losing out on deductions that you're just not tracking well enough. So open a business bank account, use it exclusively for business. On a higher end level, it's do that planning and take the time to work on your business. It's hard because you're always grinding, you're always trying to make money, meet with clients, do your service or make your products and sell those. But you need to set aside some amount of time every month or every quarter to look at your business. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? What are your goals? What can you do better? What are some KPIs you can set to track that? And it's going to be hard at first. You might not know what to do. It might be worth paying someone to come in and help you do some planning to get it started. But once you get into that rhythm, it's going to be easier to make sure, hey, I want to get in there. I want to make sure I'm doing this and keeping yourself on the right track so you don't stray and try too many things.
That one relates the most obviously to me is because that's what changed everything for me. So I just want to piggyback on the side of that because look, in the beginning, we were meeting once a month. It wasn't like we were meeting every week. And then I think we did a quarterly review or whatever, and then we always had the annual review. Can't remember if we pieced the monthlies into those or had an additional meeting to those. But when you realize you're growing a business, 1 month goes very, very fast. 1 quarter goes very, very fast. And then all of a sudden, 3, 4, 5 years in goes very fast. So set those up right out of the gate. Everybody says it's, I'm running around, it's too hard, I'm working in my business, not on my business. Start blocking things off and actually putting things on the calendar. And that's the easiest way to make it happen is if you set time apart and you physically block it off on your schedule, your calendar, whatever it may be, it will force you to, if you stay true to that, it will force you to invest the time in those things. I can't reiterate enough how much that saved my business and also made me understand the true meaning of how to grow a business and understand the importance of every variable that happens in the business. And the earlier and the sooner that you do those things, it's just going to be a lot easier for you at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. So I guess website's down. I mean, you can't find you anywhere, huh?
You guys are working on the website. It'll be there soon, hopefully.
Okay. So
by the end of the year.
If anybody wants anything from Stan, we'll put information, email, all that stuff in the notes at the bottom of the video. Obviously, reach out to me, Chris Callan, Derek Sioka, any of us. We work with Stan daily, and then you'll see a brand new website here soon from our marketing agency. So we appreciate the opportunity and the support with that. But I appreciate you coming on, man. I really believe you should have your own podcast or you should be on this a lot because I know I stress it, man, time and time again, an accounting piece of business and having somebody like you your mom, your team that you guys have to play the role that you do in business is very, very important. And it can be the difference of being successful, not being successful, or just flat out winning or failing in the business world. So I appreciate all your work that you've done, man, thus far, and excited to kind of keep things going. And, I'm looking forward to doing the next series of videos that we're going to have, because I think we can really help a lot of people. So thank you for the time, man. I appreciate you being on.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the kind words.
All right, we'll talk to you later. Thanks, Dan.